My talk will be mostly focused on implementers side of all this stuff. We have recently introduced a label-based access control in Aidbox. There's a story behind that I will tell you. Aidbox is a FHIR backend, and the access control is a very, very solid layer of this. Historically, our customers used access policies to define the access to the resources, and basically it's an attribute-based access control. Our customers reached out to us with the questions on can we handle the cases with confidential and sensitive data in Aidbox more easily? And the answer was, from our side, the answer was definitely why not to use FHIR security labels to do this, because looks like they were built for this. So as previously was told, like FHIR security label is just a concept attached resource or a bundle meta that defines some additional security information about what it talks about. So taking this knowledge on one hand and putting it into the flow, it looks like this. So we can build it enhance our access control layer with a pre-built security labels flows. So if a user has enough access and he or she is calling for a specific resource that has a specific classification, and the confidentiality or sensitivity layer is okay. So what we are doing is we are providing a user access to the resource. But if not, for example, if the user doesn't have enough access rights, what we're doing is just we are saying, no, it's not possible for you. Quite easy and understandable. What's good, and the core FHIR brings confidentiality codes. This is just a classification that contains 6 codes, from very restricted to unrestricted, hierarchical, meaning that if a user has access to very restricted information, he or she will by default have access to less sensitive and confidential information. And sometimes this is not the right case to handle the cases when, for example, 2 providers should have access to observations, for example. We consider observations like a very restricted or restricted information. But what if some observations contain information about pregnancy or child abuse information or whatever? We definitely don't want both providers to have access to this. That's where the FHIR data segmentation for privacy IGA comes into play. Implementation guide basically brings additional vocabularies that allow us to segment, enforce access to specific information depending on the context. The most interesting cases for us here are sensitivity and compartment, because there are definitely cases when for example, I want to provide access to resources or resource elements for providers, but I want to provide access to different resource element to research departments or any other people. So basically how it looks like. A resource, it was shown previously, but I will just show it once again. We have security here, system code, and display. That's how it looks like with just a confidential code. Very easy. But what happens managing access to the resources or the bundles is not enough. What if we want to manage access to resource elements? For example, I have a patient resource with an identifier and name, and I want to share a masked information or strip the information to the users that don't have enough access rights. So for example, if our name is normal, and the access level and the identifier is restricted access level, what can Aidbox or what can system do? The first way is when a user comes in with a normal access level, we are just sharing the name elements and we are masking identifier elements. We do the masking using data absent reason extension. So basically, a user will see a name and an extension with a dot, or we can just strip it. It can lead to different consequences, but I will talk about it later. Again, very simple. Inline security labels, they require to add a process inline label to the resource meta and security labels on resource elements via standard extensions. That's how it might look like. There's a resource type encounter, there's a specific code that we want. Besides, they are working in pairs, like confidentiality and the sensitivity codes. What we want to do is we want to put an extension for these elements. How will system? It will provide you the security meta, and we'll give you an extension that's a standard extension with a data absent reason and value code mask. But when we were designing this with our customers, we came across one more solution And this is how it might look when we just strip FHIR security labels, because the security labels basically might be a data leak. So all these technical implementations and our discussions with the FHIR community and with our customers brought us to a very serious trade-offs between medical safety and data leakage. After long discussions, so I just want to put some facts here, and you can definitely check the FHIR chat discussion. I'll put the link, but they are definitely an organization make a decision on themselves. The trickiest part is that the disclosure of data absence can sometimes be a data leak. So when I'm telling to you that the element or the resource is redacted, it might mean that I do have this resource. And when it comes to a very sensitive information, what happens? You know that I have it. So there should be very tough decisions before doing this. So, and on the other side, for example, if we do not provide sensitive data, what happens if a provider doesn't get enough data to make a clinical decision? That's another point of the problem, and I think there will be some place for discussion on the roundtable after my talk. Another problem that we came across basically is privacy versus conformance. Again, a rabbit hole. But what happens if we modify requirement elements in FHIR resources with data absent reason? It will lead to non-conformance. If it's conformance for the sake of conformance, that's totally fine. But what if a client relies on the data structure? How does it work? This is also not yet finalized question. So the current state of the implementation in Aidbox looks like this. So we have a security labels enabled mode that basically, if a resource has no security label in it, it's not available via API. Once we've done this, we came across different interesting, for example, a user once trying to log in for the first time, doesn't see any resources, either FHIR related or custom resources. And that's why we came up with a super admin role that has to the instance. But that was not so obvious for us when we're doing this. Explicit security labels. Aidbox expects explicit security labels from external security labeling service. I do want to see, and I'm looking forward to seeing a security labeling service that does everything on the fly. I do believe that a bunch of our customers will have quite a lot of questions to the performance of all this stuff, but that's definitely what we're talking about. And one more thing is that, as I mentioned, security labels by themselves can be a data leak. So Aidbox provides a mode that strips security labels from a resource totally. What are we gonna do next? Definitely there's a lot of place to talk about rules for labeling and access control. So to be more dynamic, not static, but static works. I'm not sure about dynamic. Security labeling services that allow us to do it on the fly, and we are definitely looking forward to implement more data segmentation for privacy cases. And if you have any cases in your mind or challenges you see, come to us to talk about it. That's it. I have a small demo. Not sure I have enough time to show it. I would like just...
You maybe can show to the people how they can do it by themselves.
Sure. There's a wonderful place to do this. It's called Aidbox documentation. So it shows a full demo. I can just be very brief. So
okay, we have some time.
I have an Aidbox. So it's like... here. You see my screen? It's posted. So I have a locally running Aidbox, and I have two clients, one for provider and one for like some finance guys. What we are doing, I wasn't talking about how of the context of a user. So how do these security labels come to the Aidbox? Right now, it comes with a JSON Web Token that contain the access levels. So what we are doing in Aidbox, very simple. We are creating a token introspector resource that parses the token. We are creating an access policy that basically is very simple. I allow to do FHIR read and FHIR search operations and putting some dummy sample data here. But what happens? So a patient resource, an encounter resource, and observation resource. But what happens next? When I start calling this from another user, where I see genders, but I also don't see the name. For example, I'm a guy who does some analytics, so I want to get the genders, but I shouldn't get any names. When we are starting to call for observations, for example, again, it has a reference here, and here I don't see, so I see neither an identifier nor NA. So that's here. Aidbox can be quite easily loaded, and we are welcoming you to come and play with it. We can share this Postman collection, and there's quite an extensive documentation on our site, and we are totally looking forward to discussing these cases with you.
Thank you, Mike.